Well, the Wu flu situation continues to spiral out of control. The World Health Organization is coming out, acting like, oh, things are actually getting a little better. You see, because the numbers are kind of plateauing in Hubei or Hubei, which of course is the province in which Wuhan is located. And so, see, the rest of the world really shouldn't worry that much. And first of all, let's say that he's right. That, hey, in Hubei, the cases are plateauing, they're not rising at as quick of a rate, and perhaps the containment measures are working somewhat in that one city in Wuhan, which is on total lockdown, where nobody's allowed to leave their homes, where the economy has come to a complete screech, where I believe the law is now under, martial law, that the one member of the household is allowed to leave the house every 2 days, only to buy, necessary supplies like food. And that under those very, very strict and draconian circumstances, that the spread of the virus is being somewhat limited. That in no way should give us, in the rest of the world, any hope, because first of all, even if you could impose those restrictions on the entire rest of the population, which governments around the world simply wouldn't be able to do, it would mean a total collapse of the global economy. You would have to shut down the entire world anywhere that this virus is found. And that wouldn't even stop the spread of it. It would just slow it and make it, not spread as quickly as it might. What he's basically saying is that, hey, if you shut down the global economy, well, then things will only get as bad as they are in Wuhan right now. In the rest of the world, it won't get much worse to where the entire population dies off. But of course, if you shut down the global economy, then you're probably going to have people dying for other reasons, because you simply won't be able to pump in food to try and supplement those people who aren't working. Because if nobody's working around the world, if this is a global pandemic and you try and shut down production, well, then there just simply won't be the resources to feed the people who are not working. You can't run the kind of quarantine like they have in Wuhan in very many areas, without putting too much stress on the system. You can only do that in a very small area. And all of this that I'm saying is still assuming that the numbers coming out of China and out of Hubei, Wuhan in particular, are accurate, which, again, now we have plenty of reason to believe that they are absolutely lying. And this is now, a mainstream position. You have U.S. senators, making statements as such in the Senate that we probably cannot trust at all these Chinese numbers. However, of course, I wouldn't say just take his word for it, because there's a lot of China hawks, of course, in the U.S. Senate who are going to make up things themselves. Even if this wasn't true, they might doubt. Even if China wasn't lying about the numbers, these guys would probably doubt them. However, those of us who do credibly doubt these numbers coming out of China, it gives us some cover when you have U.S. senators making the same case. Because, of course, there have been people who have rightly pointed out that the number of increases in cases in China, if it exceeds the production rate of the test kits that they use to test people for coronavirus, the number can't exceed that. So even if the infection rate is faster, you can only the maximum rate of spread that can be measured is the production rate of those test kits. So if the virus is spreading faster, then they can make kits to test people. Then the numbers are simply not accurate, even if the Chinese aren't lying at all, even if the Chinese are trying to report the best data they can. But of course, it looks like the Chinese are, in fact, trying to hide the number of cases and suppress it, because there are, plenty of cases in which, scenarios in which people in China can have the coronavirus and not be officially diagnosed. I believe that the major way seems to be these quarantine camps, which look more like concentration camps, to where they're just rounding people up who are suspected of having the virus, throwing them in the backs of trucks. We're getting lots and lots of videos now of people all over China kicking and screaming, and begging, please don't take me, and everyone around them and the crowd just sort of staring at them and not wanting to help them, because they know they'll be hauled off too, and they just get thrown into the back of these vans or trucks or whatever. They get locked in. Some of them, actually, there was one video I saw where it looked like, an animal control truck, and they, threw them in the back in the dog cage. And so after these people are brought to these quarantine camps, like this so-called hospital in Wuhan that they were building, the one that they had that bizarre video a couple weeks ago where there were like 500 excavators all working like right next to each other, digging holes. That to me looked like a total photo op, by the way, because why would you have all these excavators and they're sitting right next to each other? They can't even work. It was just and they were like picking up dirt and setting it right next to them, and right where the other guy was digging. It was just total propaganda. But anyway, that aside, they now have these so-called hospitals completed with all these beds, and that's literally all there is. There's just beds. There are apparently no bathrooms. There are no medical instruments or anything like that. There's no medicine. And there don't even really appear to be any doctors. So these people certainly aren't being tested. They're not being cared for. And if they do contract the coronavirus, they're not being moved to real hospitals, certainly. They just get locked in this place with no bathroom and are expected to just sit there and wait and hope they don't die. It's actually a very similar situation to this whole, Royal Caribbean Princess cruise ship that's off the coast of Japan, sitting in I think Tokyo Bay. They said that they won't let board or land or anything because they found one Wu flu victim on the ship. Now the confirmed cases, I should say, of Wu flu on the ship, which has 3,700 people, I believe, is up to 136 in just a few days. And now I get that a cruise ship is sort of the most infectious place or easy place to spread illness in the world, probably. But a lot of these unsanitary cities or where people are very densely populated, you might get similar rates of infection, even if they're not nearly as high as this cruise ship. But considering, it's not normal if someone on a cruise ship has a flu for, I believe, for 136 people to get the flu within a week. I don't know, maybe I'm totally ignorant on that, but this seems like a really, really high rate of infection. And I'm curious to see out of this 136 people, how many of them they're able to keep alive. I assume that, because this is Japan, not China, that they are sending doctors, onto the cruise ship that is sitting in the bay. And of course, they're going out and, letting them send up food, I guess, on the life rafts. They let them down on the pulleys and then pull them back up full of food, kind of like the Valley of the Lepers. And now doctors in Britain are warning that this could, the virus is already spreading domestically, person to person. So there could be a big outbreak in Britain now coming up. Of course, Singapore is already getting pretty hard hit. People there are starting to panic. Seems pretty clear now that the virus has taken a hold in Singapore and is spreading around from all sorts of people. There are plenty of people now who are infected who don't know it yet, aren't presenting symptoms. I believe there's maybe like 20-something folks who actually are confirmed cases in Singapore. But again, that's a densely populated city. You just got people walking around. They're going to be spreading it to each other. So outside of China, even if, let's say, we could snap our fingers and all of a sudden everyone in China was cured, the virus is already taking a hold outside that country. So I think that we still would be in very bad shape. And of course, no country other than China is going to be able to impose all these quarantine restrictions or whatever. I guess the only way that this quarantine thing would have been able to contain the virus was if they implemented these measures before anyone with the Wu flu got outside of China. But of course they didn't do that, because this is the 21st century. People move around a lot. And so this virus now is pretty much everywhere. I even heard that they're testing cases of it in KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. And so one last piece of spooky news that I'll leave you with, that it just adds to the people's suspicions that all these numbers coming out of China are completely bogus. Supposedly now 900 people are dead, okay, and about 40,000, well, over 40,000 now are officially infected. But there is some folks who are noticing that the satellites are picking up over China, that there is a high concentration of sulfur dioxide being emitted around Wuhan. Now, apparently, sulfur dioxide is associated with, burning organic material. So you say, oh, they have some kind of biomass power plant? No, it looks like they're burning bodies. So many bodies, in fact, that you can see the fumes from space. And the Chinese now are, the Global Times, which is their, the state's mouthpiece, is running a story from a few days ago, I remember, saying how, oh, no, you need to cremate these bodies immediately after they die, to prevent the spread of the virus, which is a nice way of saying, hey, we're burning them and not necessarily counting everyone. They might count every fifth dead body. Who knows? I have no idea. But there's, the evidence is adding up about what we were hearing before about the crematoriums running 24 hours a day. So yeah, at this point, I'm starting to seriously consider going out and stocking up on some rice, because honestly, I don't have that much right now. Some extra supply of rice and beans would be pretty good. Because again, the panic will set in long before there's ever any real risk of catching the virus. And a lot of the trouble, most of the trouble perhaps, will come from that panic. Because if the virus comes to my town, I'm not too worried about being able to self-isolate and just try and stay away from people and not, if I know that it's out there, not getting sick, I think would be pretty easy for someone like me, because I don't have to interact with a lot of people if I don't want to. Some of you might know that Walmart just rolled out this new feature to where you can order all your groceries online and then just pick it up at a cart, in the parking lot. I believe Target also has a similar service. You do all your shopping that way online on Walmart.com or whatever, and then you go and pick up your groceries and just wear a gas mask or something when you're getting them and you're paying for them. And perhaps don't even hand the person your card. Don't let anybody touch your stuff. But then again, I guess, if you have a bunch of people all over touching your food and stuff, that could get you sick. So maybe we're all screwed no matter what. But we got a long way to go until we get to that point. So if you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.